Hey guys, this is Ash and you're watching WriterGAsh. So today I'm doing a book talk on Kingdom of Ash, and before we get into that, let's look at the wonderful edition. So this is the Kingdom of Ash edition from cover from Nerdy Ink with Irene on the cover and the beautiful golden sprayed edge, stenciled edge, courtesy of Kingdom Book Designs. I got the stencil from her and I painted it myself. The whole process has been so much fun and I really enjoyed getting back into the Throne of Glass world. So Kingdom of Ash is the final installment of the Throne of Glass series. As I have probably made clear by this video in all the previous Throne of Glass book talks I've done, it's one of my favorite series. It is my favorite series. And while Kingdom of Ash isn't my favorite book in the series, it is still a wonderful book and it was a great ending to the Throne of Glass series. So let's talk a little non-spoiler before we get into the nitty-gritty of Kingdom of Ash. Before we get into it, I want to remind you, because this is the final book in the Throne of Glass series, even the non-spoiler section will have spoilers for the rest of the series. So Kingdom of Ash begins after Aelin has been taken away by Maeve. She's now a captive in Maeve's hands and is being tortured, and her mate, Rowan, has gone to look for her. And in the beginning of the book, that is one of the plot lines that happen. Rowan, Elide, Gabriel, and Lorcan are on their way to find Aelin, who is basically being tortured by Maeve and Karen. I don't know why I think of him as Karen, I think. And Fenris, who is still in Maeve's control, is doing what he can to be there for Aelin. Now, what else is happening in this book? Dorian and Manon have gone off separately. In the end of Empire Storm, Manon has all two word keys, and they need to get the third one. And now that Aelin is no longer able to, Dorian has decided he's going to be the one to try to destroy the word keys and send Erewhon away. So they're on their way to figure out stuff with Morath. And then finally, we have, well, not finally actually, we also have the people from Tower of Dawn joining back in. So Kaol, Nesrin, and Irene are on their way with the Kagan's children and their army. And they're on their way to provide aid to Terrasen. And finally, we have all of the armies Aelin brought together, working with Terrasen to protect Terrasen and fight Erewhon. And Aedion and the Lord of Terrasen are coordinating that aspect. And Lysandra and Aedion are still at odds from the end of Empire Storms. And that catches us up to the beginning of Kingdom of Ash. So this book is well over 900 pages. It's 984. It is a chunky book and looks deceivingly not bad. It looks like maybe a 500, 600 page book. But no, it's a 984 page book. And there is a lot of spoiler content to talk about. So spoiler alert from Kingdom of Ash. So let's begin with Aelin, because this one is in no particular order of liking, because that's what I normally do. I do from the stuff I was least excited about to the ones I was most excited about. It just makes sense to talk about Aelin first, because that's the most pressing issue in this book. And Aelin has a lot of like arcs happening in this book. So let's start with Aelin being in Maeve's control. Aelin is being tortured by Maeve. Maeve is trying to get the location of the word keys from Aelin, trying to convince her with mind tricks. And from Tower of Dawn, which by the way I said spoiler from every other book, from Tower of Dawn we know Maeve is black, so she has certain powers. She is like getting inside Aelin's head, and Aelin is also dealing with the fact that she just found out Maeve manipulated Rowan for the entirety of his life basically, and she's dealing with a lot. She's struggling, she has given up hope in life, like she's ready to die. It's that bad. And like she just wants to escape this hellscape that Maeve has basically built for her. And her and Fenris have formed this friendship in this place where they have this unspoken language, blinks to communicate with each other. Fenris is also dealing with a lot. His twin brother was killed by Maeve because he betrayed Maeve. And like he's dealing with all of that guilt. In this book later on, where Lorcan's on the battlefield and Rowan's like, you need to go get him, Fenris can't because he hasn't used the power he shared with his brother in that long. To him, the worst thing that could happen has happened. He's just as broken as Aelin is in this scene, in this part of the book. Later on, like when they escape Maeve's control, we see them like kind of talk and like them like lean on each other as they're healing, and neither of them are okay at that point. And I don't know what else to say about that. So let's go to Rowan and the others. So Rowan, instead of doing what Aelin had asked him to, which is go to Terrasen, goes after Aelin. Which, like, if he hadn't, I would have been pissed. It would also be so out of character for him. He promised her to whatever end, and that means going to get her from Maeve. So he goes to get her from Maeve, and they try to find her. Elide says, okay, maybe they're in Doranol. And everyone's like, no, it's not gonna happen. But guess who was right? When Aelin sends out that power. So they figure out, yes. So Aelin and Maeve are in Doranol. Anyway, so after weeks and weeks of traveling, they go towards Doranol and they ask for help from one of the sentries who happens to be, one of them happens to be Lorcan's ex-lover. That was interesting. But to see, like, despite how, like, horrible of a person he was, most people didn't hold ill will for him, even his exes. So maybe he wasn't always like a douchebag. Like what he did at the end of Empire Storm was bad. It was horrible and I hate him for it. But also he was in terror about Elide. He made a decision and we also have that conversation here. He couldn't, like he wasn't crawling towards Maeve when Elide was like, oh, at the end, after she left you, you still like were crawling towards her. That was like horrifying. How could you do that? But no, he wasn't crawling towards Maeve. He was crawling to save Aelin. And Maeve had just like broken the blood oath. And that had like broken him or something. There's something with magic that I don't fully get. But he and Gabriel were very negatively impacted by that. And he was trying. And I think that makes somewhat of a difference. But Elide still doesn't forgive him. And I love her for standing her ground. So they go and Elide, despite not having a lick of power, does what she does best. She uses her wit, her brains. She uses everything she has to save her queen. She does what she can. She contributes in her own way. And they don't even need to do it because Aelin takes Karen down. Aelin and Fenris together do it, and Fenris almost dies. He's near death when Rowan gets there, and Aelin has already like started running, and she runs into Gabriel. She tells them to go save Fenris. They manage to get Fenris, and to save his life, she gives Fenris a blood oath. And at that point, both Rowan and Fenris are blood oathed to her. And later on, she has Lorcan swear a blood oath to her, so she can trust him to enter Terrasen. That's all she cares about. Like, she basically tells him, if you want to be near Elide ever again, you need to take this blood oath. And she's never going to abuse that. She is doing it so she can be sure that Lorcan doesn't betray them again, which he has given them a good excuse to think he would. And Gabriel has this moment where he's like, she's given a blood oath to everyone else, why not me? And like Rowan explains, like, she wants to give this blood oath to Adian before you're his father, and that's why, which at the end, guys, this is a spoiler review, so I just want to talk about it now because we're talking about Gabriel. I really loved Gabriel in this book. Later on in the book, where Adian has, like, he and Adian reunite and he fights for Terrasen, for his son. He sacrifices his life for his son. He truly loved his son. I really wish he could have been alive at the end of this book, because I would have loved to see him and Adian have a father-son relationship. At the end, after everything is done, Aelin sees Gabriel's body and she gives him the blood oath finally. In death, he dies a man of honor, sworn to the Queen of Terrasen. It's just, this book has so many sad moments. Like, I can't. Just too much pain. Okay, back to where we were. So now that Aelin is out, she's really, like, struggling. Like I said, she had given up. She was ready to die. And it takes her a while to claw back out of that place. Maeve has hurt her so badly that she has lost all her scars. She has lost every memory on her skin. And all of these things matter to her. The cut on her palm from the oath she made on Nehemiah's grave. The years and years of training, she had to retrain herself so she could, like, have, like, house. I don't know anything about training, and I don't know how that impacts it, but, like, there was something mention of that. But they're on their way back to Terrasen, but they see the Rooks on their journey back, and that brings us the people from the southern continent. And let's talk about them next. So Kale and Irene are bringing the people from the southern continent, and they discover Aniel is about to be sacked. Aniel is Kale's home, so they go there and they fight for Aniel. His father is an absolute utter jerk. He has kept him and his mother apart for years. He has made Kale feel like his mother was disappointed. He hid letters from Kale's mother sent to him, and it was just, his father is a truly awful person. He isn't Erewhon or Vernon level bad. Like, he never betrayed his people. The only thing he was good at was, like, he was loyal to Aniel. But even then, he was kind of a dickwad. Anyway, so Kale and the people from the southern continent fight for Aniel, and they're deciding what to do next when Aelin and Co show up. And Aelin swaggers in, and they're having, I just really love that scene where there's just, like, Aelin and Nesrin have a reunion, and Aelin and Hussar have a really good dynamic. I really enjoyed their scene. Both of them witty badasses. And after that scene, Aelin and Rowan have a moment where she's like, do you think they bought it? Do you think they bought it? Because I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like you know, she doesn't feel like herself. She doesn't know who she is anymore. Maeve has truly broken her. And later on, yeah, I can't remember exactly which way it happened, but Aelin also met Falcon, I think, who is Lysandra's uncle. So he comes in and let me think of the exact scene. So he comes into the room, Nesrin introduces them, and she's like, oh yeah, this is Lysandra's uncle. So he's like, oh, you know my niece. She's like, yeah, she's a lady in my court. And then Nesrin introduces, this is Aelin Galapinius. I just love anytime Aelin is introduced. I love Aelin Galapinius. And I also love that Aelin is able to open up about what happened with Maeve. When Nesrin tells Aelin about what they found out about Maeve being black, she's like, I saw her bleed black. I remember it and I thought I hallucinated. And then she tells the entire like southern continent people that, yeah, I was a captive for Maeve for the last 2 months, and we've been trying to find our way back to Terrasin for the last month. And you could see how, like, I think that changed the tide for the Emperor's children. Like, that made them decide, hey, we want to help this person. And that's the vibe I got there. And then Dorian comes and joins them. Oh, there's a scene before that happens. Let's talk about that before we move to Dorian. So Morath is attacked and they're breaking a dam and it's going to flood the city and kill everyone. And that's when Aelin finally lets the power she has been keeping in for months out. And she saves thousands and thousands of people and shows the world what a fire-breathing queen is. So now in that scene, another excellent thing was Elide. Lorcan is basically gutted in the battlefield and no one else like knows where he is, and they realize he's out there. That's when like the scene with Fenris and Rowan happens, and before they know it, Elide's gone. She, on Farsha, which is the horse from Tower of Dawn, she's on Farsha running to Lorcan. And that's when Elide decides to mist the water rushing towards them, because like Elaine, I keep calling her Elaine. Aelin, they have very similar names. Aelin loves Elide, like she is loyal to Elide and she would do anything to protect Elide, and she finally goes in and like goes feral on the water. And Elide, on the other hand, is doing what she can. She hauls Lorcan onto the horse and he's like, no, you should go, you'll get there faster. She refuses to leave him. And that in that moment, they kind of come back together and she finally begins to forgive him, because like he has shown that he, like, you know, he never truly had the worst intentions. And I think she did make him work hard enough for it. Like, for how much of the book we had left, this was the best that we could get with the make him work for it. You can only do so much with so many perspectives. But I do think he tried to prove himself, like, especially after finding out, even in the moment, like, he tried to save Aelin. Then he went all of those months to help find Aelin. He's not a truly bad person, and that is important to know. And I do like that they like kind of come back together. Okay, that moves us on to Dorian. So Dorian is with Manon. They have gone off towards Morath, where Erewhon's forces are, and they need the third key. So he's been training with Manon and he has been like accessing all of these different kind of powers. I'm very confused about Dorian's power. How the fuck can he do so much? I know he has raw magic, but does that mean he can like do anything? People always complaining about Aelin being all powerful. Fucking Dorian. Like, seriously. We'll come back to his power later, but he also takes on shape-shifting. Him and Manon have kind of a contentious relationship. So they've like started to fall more into each other, but also push each other apart more. Manon struggles to open up to anyone, and Dorian being amongst everyone, but he's also pushing her apart in this book. But Manon finds her way to the Krakens to rally them, and she meets her grandmother, who was her father's mother. The other grandmother, not the evil Black Bee grandmother. And she tries to like convince them, and she orchestrates a thing where where their group is attacked by Yellowlegs, I think, some Iron Teeth witch clan, and she protects the Krakens, trying to convince them. The Krakens aren't fully convinced quite yet, but they fight together. Over time, she does manage to convince them, and she rallies an army of Kraken witches to fight with the 13 and face the Morat's forces. And I do love that, like, when she goes to talk to Petra, Blue Blood, Petra shows mercy and lets her go. And in the end, Petra does turn for the right side. And Manan is someday going to Manan is going to forge the path forward for the Iron Teeth and the Kraken Witches and bring them back home. And I think Manan is a great leader. And well, we were talking about Manan being leader at the end, where Manan and Aelin have a scene where they're like, us queens need to stick together, kind of a scene. I've mentioned this before in my previous video, I truly love the friendship between Aelin and Manan. I'm always for women supporting women, and I think as two queens in that realm, they really need to be there for each other, and they recognize that. I absolutely think in, like, beyond this book, Aelin and Manan will be there supporting each other because they've been through too damn much to not. Now back to Dorian. So Dorian basically tries to leave Manan because she's not like, she doesn't want him to go into Morath and die, basically, and she doesn't want to admit she doesn't want him to do that for her sake, because that would be the worst thing in the world to tell him she cares for him. But they decide to part ways after he learns how to shapeshift and basically is like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And he goes into Morath, where he comes across Maeve. And him and Maeve kind of work together. And Maeve, like, he even offers to make Maeve his queen. Threw up a little in my mouth. The idea, I know it was never gonna happen, which, by the way, if you've read Lunar Chronicles, spoiler alert for Winter of Lunar Chronicles, where Kai married Lavanna. I don't know why I just thought of that. This always reminds me of that, because, like, the evil queen marrying the prince just makes me want to... I absolutely hated that plotline in Lunar Chronicles, which has nothing to do with Throne of Glass. So we're going back to Throne of Glass, so no more spoilers for Lunar Chronicles here. Back to here. So Dorian and Maeve work together, and Maeve betrays him at the end. But turns out Dorian already knew. Of course he knew Maeve was going to betray her. So he double crosses her and gets the third word key and goes off and then meets up with Aelin and co. So Aelin, Chaol, and Dorian are finally back together. Our original trio, really. And they decide it's time to destroy the word gates. So Aelin basically decides in this new world, people will have a say. So everyone votes, and people vote that they do it now rather than go to Terrasen. And a part of Aelin really wanted to go to Terrasen before she died to see Terrasen one last time. But she doesn't get that chance. So, Rowan suggests, what if Aelin and Dorian did it together? If they did it together, like, the likelihood Aelin would die from it would be lower. So she goes and asks Dorian, and I was really hoping this would work. So her and Dorian go, and Chaol and Rowan join them, and Dorian and Aelin go into the whatever, like, world, like, thing it was. They go into the word keys to destroy it, and they're putting all of their power into the lock. And the old king of Ardalan comes in, and Aelin, like, him and Dorian have a talk, and Aelin basically pushes Dorian out so he doesn't die and drains the rest of her magic on it. She has one drop of magic left, which is the magic she has from Mab. But the gods are absolute assholes, and she knows that, like, she's gonna lose her, like, she's gonna die when she uses the last bit of magic. And basically she was like, the last thing I want to ask you is, when you leave, please leave Elena here, and you can leave Erwin in exchange, like, I'll deal with Erwin, leave Elena here. And they were like, oh, that's not gonna change our mind, and they kill Elena anyway and decide to not deal with Erwin either, like they promised. And Aelin, she destroys them in return, as they deserve to be. But no, Mala, Elena's mother and Aelin's ancestor, gave Aelin a kernel of power as well, and that's how she gets back to her world. Now, this next scene is one of the most epic scenes. So when Rowan redid her tattoos after Maeve captured her, tortured her, she lost all the marks on her body. He also drew in word marks to help her come back to him. And Mala tells her, follow the marks. And she follows the marks. She goes through so many different worlds, including Crescent City and our wonderful Night Court. Crescent City is a little harder to detect. I've read Crescent City at this point, and even then, I was like, where is Crescent City? But no, there's a mention of like a river, like the shape of a moon or something like that. But then the Prythian scene is very much so Prythian, because you see Rhys and Farah, a heavily pregnant Farah, standing there during Starfall, basically, I think, and the skies, like the stars falling, and for some reason Rhys cushions her fall and helps her, and then she finds her way back to her world and back to Rowan. And she then tells everyone that Erevan is still here, the gods didn't hold up their end of the bargain, basically, and that she has destroyed the gods. And yeah, but destroying the gods didn't mean necessarily everyone lost their powers. Like, for example, the healers, there was Silba Best. I don't necessarily know if Silba was one of the gods up there, but Elide still felt Enieth, Lorcan still felt Hellas. I'm not sure which gods were destroyed. Now, they have destroyed the word keys, so Erevan can't bring his brothers into the world, but they still have Erevan and Maeve to deal with. That also brings us to the biggest issue with this book. My biggest issue with this book, and I think a lot of people's biggest issue with this book. Aelin lost her magic, most of it at least. She has maybe a kernel of what she once had. So I'm thinking when it says kernel, I think it means what she had at the not at the beginning of Heir of Fire, but like before she fully let go of her blocks to get to the whole well. And I think it's still a substantial amount. They even say it's a substantial amount, but it's not what it once was. Now, I'm not sure how much magic Dorian has left, but if it turns out he has most of it left, I will be very pissed, because he also gave up his magic to the lock. If he got to keep it and she lost it all, I'm going to be so pissed. Because Aelin's magic was so important to her, it pisses me off that Sarah J. Maas would take it away from her. I am really hoping that eventually it comes back to her. I've seen rumors, not rumors, theories. So as we know, she infused her magic into Goldrin, so she can still wield her like original power when she's wielding Goldrin, which is what she does when she fights Maeve. And if she can do that, what if Goldrin breaks and she gets her magic back? If that is true, I want Goldrin gone. I love Goldrin, but I want Goldrin gone so Aelin can have her magic. Absolutely, like, I can't. Aelin needs her magic, and I need Aelin to have her magic, because her fire was phenomenal. I know she's still Aelin without it. I know she's still a wonderful queen. I know she's still a competent person, and I know she still won this battle without her magic. But that doesn't mean I'm okay with her not having her magic. And that was my rant. Now, that was the most disappointing scene in the book, her not having her magic. Now I'm done. So, now that we have Aelin without the full force of her power, they make their way back up, and the Fae folk, the tiny Fae of the Oakwald, come to their aid and help them manage to go through the forest to get to Terrasen quicker. On the way, they also ran into Vernon, who is in the Fangs, and Aelin basically chains him up like he chained Elide and leaves him in a room when they're done getting information from him. She did promise to not kill him, and she didn't, and God, I wanted him to suffer so much more. I am a really vindictive person in books. I swear I'm not like that in real life, but I love seeing bad people suffer in books. Back to this. So they're on their way. Now, we've talked about everyone but Terrasen. In Terrasen, Aedion and Lysandra are doing what they can to protect Terrasen, and they're still at odds. In the beginning, Lysandra basically like keeps trying to apologize to Aedion, and he keeps refusing to accept it. Like, she is even like, he throws her out naked into the snow at one point. I can't remember the detail. And that was like the breaking point for Lysandra. And later, when Lysandra is so wounded that she transforms back into Lysandra when she was fighting as Aelin and healing as Aelin, that everyone knows that Lysandra was faking Aelin, he finally like comes to his senses and realizes he can't lose her. And at this point, Lysandra rightfully refuses him. And I wish this had happened longer, but she forgives him too easily. But I do get they were in like war and they were gonna die at any point, and she didn't want to die with regrets and stuff. But I do wish there was more of like pushback from her, because he was an absolute dickwad. I've used that word twice in this video, which is twice more than I normally do. Back to the point here. So Aedion is stripped of his title as like the commander of the Bane, and although despite that, the forces that the forces that Aelin gathered still answer to him, because they still are loyal to Aelin, and they're fighting. And a bunch of witches are about to attack, and Manon and her force comes and joins them. And it's just a lot of battle, so I don't know what to say except for there was battle. One of the saddest scenes in that group was when Martog died. And the worst part of it was, we don't know how it happened. We know he went to the front, unlike any of these other old people who just sat on their asses. He went to the front and we just saw his dead body later. We did hear what happened, but I just wish that scene wasn't so brushed under the rug, because Martog deserved a bit more acknowledgement, because he was loyal to Aelin through thick and thin. And then we have Day 13. So the witch towers are about to be used against Terrasen, and the 13 surround it and give up their lives. They basically do the yielding, which is something a witch does once in her life, the only time she has access to her magic. And she destroys herself and destroys everything around her. And they take down the witch tower, but they also die. All of the 13 and their wyverns. So Abraxos' mate dies, and Manon loses every one of her family members, everyone she's cared about. And it is just so painful. And Manon is absolutely broken after that. And the reason they could do that is because first Manon was wounded in battle and she was still healing from it, and Astrid basically punched Manon and like took, and went. And that scene where Manon watches from the sidelines as she loses everyone she cares about. Later, when like Dorian like comes up to her and like she finally breaks down with him, that's when like they become, I think, real to me. And then another heartbreaking scene was when Elide meets up with Manon again, and she sees how like hurt she looks, how broken she looks. Elide's like, which one of them? And Manon responds with all of them. In that moment, like, Elide was one of the 13. And Elide too lost the people she loved. That was just... I wish we got more of Elide and Manon after mourning the loss of their sisters. Okay, we've already talked about Gabriel, which was another heartbreaking loss, which brings us to our final two. Erewhon and Maeve. These were happy losses. So, Maeve, obviously Aelin had to deal with it. Like, Maeve knew Aelin had lost her power at this point. So Maeve was taunting her, and Aelin was using Goldrin to mimic her power so it looked like she had magic. And her and Erewhon were together at this point. So she was mocking Erewhon for not realizing Maeve had been growing an army of healers. And she knew that healers could destroy Erewhon and blah, blah, blah. And Erewhon at first wasn't believing her. And then he realized that, oh fuck, Maeve was always planning on betraying me. So he goes off. And we'll talk about that because that scene's badass too. But Maeve and Aelin have a thing, and all of Maeve's old and Aelin's current Bloodstone soldiers comes and join them. Maeve kind of infiltrates their minds, and Aelin uses her magic to help them come out of it. And they destroy Maeve, and Aelin, like, she deserved, like, she lets Fenris take the last kill. Fenris deserved the revenge, honestly, because yes, the things he did, like the things that she did to him when she killed Connell, I think, yeah, his brother, was horrible. But he had been torturing Fenris for 100 years. Fenris is about 100, and she had basically caused, like, forced Fenris into this blood oath in a way, pushed him into it by getting to his brother. And she's an awful, awful person, and Fenris deserved the revenge. Now, finally, let's talk Erawan. So Erawan is on his way to Irene, Silva's heir, and he comes across her, and turns out it's Lysandra, because Elide came up with a badass plan to take him down. And Irene uses her magic to get rid of Erawan, and that is the end of our two big bads. And then comes the rebuilding of the kingdoms, and we don't see much of that, but we do see, like, a close to this chapter. All of the royals are there for Aelin's coronation, and the fae folk, the little fae, come in. I can't remember what they're called. Actually, I always just call them the little fae. They come in and crown her the fairy queen, and she becomes the fairy queen of the east. West. She becomes the fairy queen of the west, while Selene, Rowan's cousin, becomes the fairy queen of the east. Rowan becomes a prince of Dorna once again and gets all his funds back, and then he uses that to well, help Aelin rebuild Harrison and give her the library and the theater she desperately wants. It's like a mating present. And yeah, we also have Aelin, Chaol, and Dorian have a goodbye, because they're good friends, and it's a really sweet scene to see. We've had two proper goodbyes from them. Like, we had one at the end of Queen of Shadows, we have one now. We also have, oh, I never mentioned, Irene was pregnant in this book. Forgot about that, but not important. But Chaol and Irene are gonna go to, I think, Ardalan, because Chaol is Dorian's right-hand man, and Irene, when she is able to, plans to open a Torre Chesme, or a Torre of some kind, in Ardalan, so they can have a healing center here. We also get the goodbye between Manon and Aelin, and then we get the scene between Manon and Dorian where I think Irene literally tells them, you should just get married. And Dorian asks, so Dorian was asked by Sartak if they could leave some Rukin there to train the Wyvern, and Dorian asks Manon if, like, she would pitch in and have some witches help, and she's like, yeah. Ardalan's only a 2-hour, Rifthold's only a 2-hour Wyvern ride, so why not? And I think that could, like, potentially be the growth of their relationship. Elide and Lorcan return to Peranth eventually, and the book ends with Aelin's coronation, but she says people will be back in a few weeks for a royal wedding. Then Aedion marries Lysandra and officially becomes a Lord of Terrasen. I think the ending was satisfying, but the only thing that, like, I really, really hated with Aelin losing her magic, the full force of her magic. And that's like the worst thing in books, when the female character loses her power. I absolutely hate it. I wish books didn't do that, and I wish this book that I absolutely I think that was one of the main reasons this book is lower on my ranking list. It was because of that. At the end, we do see the King's Flame bloom when Aelin is looking at it from her balcony. And I've always just taken it as a sign that Aelin's power will someday come back. I know that's not what it means. It just means like she'll be a good ruler. But I've always taken it as a sign that her magic will come someday. So that is it for my book talk on Kingdom of Ash. I really enjoyed this series. It's one of my favorites of all time, and I hope you guys give it a shot. And if you've gotten to this point, you've given it a shot. So put your thoughts down below in the comment section. See ya!